This episode is brought to you by Yin Fang toothpaste. Yin Fang toothpaste is a 4-ingredient toothpaste with coconut oil, baking soda, cacao butter, and nanohydroxyapatite. It's non-toxic, there are no preservatives, it has low abrasivity, which preserves your teeth, it supports your oral and gut microbiome, and it's remineralizing. We ditched the tubes to help the planet, and instead, Yin Fang comes in a sustainable zero-waste packaging and delivery system. Get yours at yinandfang.com.
Welcome back to Yin and Fang, where we talk all things holistic health, food as medicine, and keeping it real when it comes to raising healthy families. Today, we're very excited to have Meagan Adams Brown with us here today. She's the founder of No Rules Nourishment. She's based right here in Austin, and she's all about helping people ditch the diet mindset and find freedom in nourishing their bodies in a way that feels good and sustainable. So with that, Meagan, welcome to the show.
All right, welcome to the podcast today. We're really excited to be here with Meagan Adams Brown of No Rules Nourishment. And this is going to be a really fun one because Meagan and I have known each other for a very long time, since college, really. So Meagan, you are all about kind of food freedom and finding health through like food as medicine. So we want to just kind of dive in and start there, and we'll just see where it goes.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so to set the stage for those who don't know you, because I think your journey is really interesting and a great starter to kind of explain how you got to where you are. Why don't you walk us through your health journey?
Yeah. So I got into this really through my own experience. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease with rheumatoid arthritis at 22, fresh out of college, and was always interested in health, but it wasn't until it was my own health. And it was one of those situations like you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like you start doing the research, you start finding what feels like this underground approach to health. And you're like, why am I not hearing about this from my doctors? Why is this not in the news? Why is this not something everybody knows about? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, can't unsee it, right? And just kept going and kept going. And it led me to study nutrition, which was, it's really funny looking back because I remember calling my mom in college all the time. Like, I want to change my major. I was a journalism major, but I was always like chemistry for non-science majors. I always thought I wasn't any good at science and math and that kind of stuff. And now that is all I do. It's crazy. So nutrition school led to functional medicine school. I started a health coaching practice, kind of on the side while I was working in the corporate world. I went into corporate communications and marketing for a while. That's where I started my career. And then my health coaching practice, I was working with a lot of people who were just like me, who were diagnosed with autoimmune disease, and they weren't getting the answers that they needed to feel better. And I knew what they needed to do from my own experience, but I needed more training. So I then added in that functional medicine approach with the health coaching. And now here, however many years later, I look back on what my journey was like. And at the time, nobody knew what functional medicine was. Like, I remember my roommates were like, just thought it was insane. The people that I was seeing and working with, and now it's a household name. I mean, like for the most part, most people know what that is now. Yeah. And to see what's changed. And what I always struggled with at the beginning of that journey was I was working with these functional medicine doctors, and they were giving me these protocols and supplements. And I think this is where functional medicine can really start to get just misunderstood, because there's a lot of people that like that medical approach is so strong. It's so deeply ingrained. And what was missing was someone helping me with like that every day, like, because that's where all the stuff is happening and how you're changing your life. In a disease, in a state like that, you have to change. Like, you can't get well doing the same things that you were doing. And that requires like in the weeds change. And so it took me a long time to get there because you have to change. So now it just feels like this full circle of I can be the one to bring together that someone holding your hand, someone who is like a friend helping you do the hard things, but can also take that root cause detective like approach, looking at really what's going on below the surface so that you can resolve those dynamics that got you in that situation in the first place. And so it's this magical combo, and it feels like this aha of like, this is what people really need to get well. And it's not just autoimmune, but so many chronic health conditions. And that's our biggest challenge as a population right now. Geez, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the what you're talking about, I think about this a lot, having also had my own health journey and like using food as medicine, and that oftentimes functional medicine can feel overwhelming if you go in without the basics, because having your hand, what you're talking about is like having your hand held through those basics, which we can talk about, is really like, you have to have that kind of first. And sometimes there's like a jump towards like, we're just going to target supplement and whatever. Right. And then people get overwhelmed, or there's too much testing, and then they kind of feel defeated. So what I'm curious about is, can you like, I think it's helpful to understand, like, what were you like? What were the things that you had to change? Like, were you eating pizza and drinking beer every day, and like you had to go from there to whatever, or what were the kind of habits that really helped you understand this like pattern change that you had to make for quote unquote good health, that maybe you thought you were healthy, but once you had the diagnosis, kind of changed your perspective?
Yeah. Looking back, like where so many of the doctors I saw started was with what I had to cut out of my diet. And it, like, I remember looking at the paper, and it's this list of like 20 things, and I was, like 24 at the time. I had 2 roommates at the time, like just that typical 24-year-old lifestyle, right? Going out on a Thursday night and you end the night at Whataburger, or like eating lean cuisines, like very limited cooking skills. Like, I mean, I think like you can't give a 24-year-old a list of 20 things you can't eat when they don't know how to cook, when they're eating lean cuisines and driving through Whataburger still. It does not work. I remember thinking like just that sinking feeling of like, my life is over. Like I'm not going to have any friends. I'm not going to do anything fun ever again. My life is basically over. Yeah. And it was a struggle. I mean, I did it like, and it felt so restrictive. It felt, and you start to develop almost like phobia, like fear around food, or like stress. And it just completely defeats the purpose. I mean, stress is what got us here.
Right.
And then you're piling that on top. No one's getting well in that scenario. So I really take the opposite approach now with my clients. Like, we can't take anything out until we start adding in more of the good, until we get you cooking, until we get you with a routine where you have an abundance of food that you feel good and excited about eating. And it really wasn't until a few years down the road when, it was really after Ross and I got married. And I had like all my new kitchen stuff, right? And like start cooking, and it's like, oh my God, this thing quinoa is so cool. Like you start kind of getting excited about these new foods and start having that perspective of like, wow, if I had never given up wheat, I never would have tried this thing. And I'm kind of like, I have goosebumps right now thinking about that, because it became fun. It became this adventure, and a lot of times we were doing it together. Like I'm cooking for the 2 of us, and we're trying new things. And it was really more about nourishing your body. about like feeding yourself and having that perspective of yeah, my body is constantly regenerating, constantly. And what do I want that to be made out of? And letting that drive it rather than, see, it's like such a different, like, it's that shift from that like constricting, like, to this expansive, like, all this beautiful food that I get to eat and feed my body on this really, really nourishing level.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about. It relates exactly to what you're saying. I can remember us having conversations at night of like how to best help other people find like health and wellness, and we definitely centered in on the fact that you go through your like late teenage years, like you talked about this, and like without any real foundation of how to cook healthy in a home. And you kind of shared that story of you get this list of what you can and can't eat, and you don't really have the fundamentals of cooking and like how to run a kitchen in your house or your apartment or whatever. And I feel like in like today's contemporary society, there's a real gap. And I think if like lots of people talked about it, I think that's a really common story that people don't know how to cook for themselves other than, without a microwave. Or
it's interesting to think. I'd never really thought about it till you just said that, but it's interesting because you leave your home at a lot of people leave at 18 and they go to college, and what happens in college is dorm food.
Yeah.
So you're just being served cafeteria food. So there's really, maybe you move off campus. Some people move into their sorority fraternity houses where it's the same thing all 4 years. So it's like there's really no opportunity to learn basic skills. And there's so much convenience food now where it's like you're saying, people learn to use a microwave because it's like Hot Pockets late at night or whatever, which really, then you're kicked out the door and you move into an apartment or a house or whatever, post college, and you have zero skills, like maybe you cook at home with your family, but I think that's like fewer people than you would think.
We're such the product. I mean, our age, our generation really grew up in that convenience food era. I mean, my mom fed us what was healthy at the time, but and it still is. I tell clients all the time, buy the frozen veggies. They're a lot of times fresher and healthier than the stuff off the shelf. But like that was our broccoli. Like I don't remember seeing fresh broccoli. It was frozen broccoli. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just so many of us just aren't taught because it's a product of that convenience food generation. The rice that came out of the box, or it's just like a lot of chicken breast,
Yeah, and we live in Austin, which is like probably called and considered a food city, right? Like you think of like Austin, Charleston, Nashville, like places that are kind of touted, New York. It's interesting because you're living in Austin, right? When you're 24, so you got like all these like food.
I was in Dallas actually.
Oh, Dallas, okay.
Yeah.
But then like, I don't know if you've experienced this too, as you had to really dial in on your eating habits. The list of like places to go shrinks down pretty quick.
Yep.
Have you been able to? While we're on food, like how often in your life do you go out to eat or cook home? Like, what's the percentage of meals you're preparing in the house?
We're pretty much like, if it's during the week, we're eating at home. I'm cooking. I cook probably 5 nights a week, and we'll eat out like usually like Saturday night. Typically eating out. Friday's usually like at home, like movie night, either takeout or I'll cook something. So yeah, it's really probably like twice a week doing restaurants.
As a mom, like have you found yourself trying to introduce your kids to cooking like at an earlier age so maybe they don't have the same challenge if they have to start cooking? And
yeah, I mean, at their age, I think it's like exposure. Just like, I feel like you guys are so great about this too. It's like what they're seeing, like what they know to be food and what's expected and what's accepted, So I always have a salad. And I always make sure that there's something that I know that they'll eat. So they love romaine lettuce. So I'll do a salad with romaine, and they love that Primal Kitchen ranch or the Caesar dressing, and I'll put veggies in there, like just depending whatever it is. So it's like, okay, they'll definitely eat that. And then there's usually like something that's a stretch. Like I've got one who loves Brussels sprouts. I've got one who's like, one who loves, actually the same one who likes the Brussels sprouts and the mushrooms and asparagus, and then the other one who doesn't. But she'll eat more of the salad, but I mean, they'll have friends over all the time, like, and they're not going anywhere near even like just the frozen, like, remember like the frozen bag of mixed veggies with like the corn and the carrots and I do those on the side all the time with like chicken or like that, like quick, like I always tell my clients, have like that backup freezer dinner, of the frozen veggies and chicken sausage, that you can just throw in the pan really quick. But yeah, I mean, it's so important what they just see at home and what people eat. This is what people eat.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I had someone reach out to me recently, kind of in a similar, you're saying like kids come over and maybe don't touch certain foods or whatever. And the question was really like, now my we eat really healthy at home. Now my child is in school, and when their friends come over, they're used to like Little Debbie snacks and Oreos, so it was like, so do I buy some of that stuff so the friends will eat, or like, what do you do? And, my answer was, no, why would you, I was like, that's a really confusing message to your child to say, like, we don't really eat this stuff, but like, it's okay if your friends are to feed it to your friends. And it's okay if your friends are here, like that, it's mixed messages. Totally. I'm not saying like my kids have never eaten Oreo. I'm just, it's confusing to say like, this is actually not super healthy food, but like, here, I'm going to give it to you and your friends when they're over, and I think there's lots of healthy, like sweet, even alternatives, so like, how would you approach that? How do you approach it in your home, and how would you approach it with clients?
I mean, I think like fruit, it's like, okay, you don't want dinner, here's a banana, or like applesauce, like I think it's so important, because this is what gives people that, like, it makes it feel way too hard and not doable. The expectation should never be that short order chef, like, I'm making a dinner for me. But I can't tell you how many people, like, that's where they're coming. Like, yeah, my kids won't eat this, so I'm making them chicken nuggets, and then this one's a vegetarian, so I'm making her butter noodles, or it's insane, it's like, no wonder you think this is so hard. I'm a big, like, there's one dinner, and then you've got like backups, like yogurt, banana, peanut butter, like, and I mean, they'll go like, there's bread, there's peanut butter, go make yourself a peanut butter sandwich.
I think there's also, I don't remember who I was talking to about this with, but I think there's like a fear of letting your kids be hungry for a little bit. It's like, they're not going to starve if they like, like if they don't want to eat.
The snacks, like, that's why they don't eat meals.
Stop it with the snacks. Or like, if you make the one meal and the kids are like, I'm not going to eat it. Okay, they'll probably eat in the morning, like, I think sometimes it's this like, well, what if they don't eat? But like,
they'll eat when
they'll be fine.
Hungry.
They'll get hungry enough, and then they'll be like, okay, I do actually want that banana, or whatever. Like, okay, or I will taste the chicken.
And they might even say, you know what, I like this after they told you they never eat it.
Yes.
Which happens a lot, actually, right? Actually, I kind of like that. Can we do this again?
Yeah. That's I think I guess I find that there is a lot of fear around letting your kids skip a meal to just feel what it really feels like to need the food.
Right.
So
I'm going to shift just a little bit. I really, as I've watched how you coach your clients and get them healthier, I've seen this parallel with some other healthcare providers that I've always really respected, where it seems like you're encouraging the client to like tell you what's wrong, and they almost guide you to guide them to the treatment, like listening to your body's like intuitions and signals. Like, how do you like? I'm curious how you prompt people to like share what their signals are, their intuitions, and like how do you dig that out of somebody to help then guide them with like a treatment?
That's a good question. Yeah. I always tell my clients that this is a partnership. Like, I'm going to bring things to the table, but nothing is prescriptive. Nothing is, and it's because there's no one straight shot path to healing. And I think there's so much in this space that's misleading, in that people think that, or they're constantly looking for like that one thing that's going to fix me, or practitioner or doctor or whoever it is. But we are the only ones who can fix ourselves, you know? So if I suggest a test or a supplement or a food even, and it does not jive with them, if they're like, I don't know, I'm going with them. Like, they know, even if they think that they don't. And that's what, like, just like you say in your question, like bringing that to their awareness, like, because they will say things, they'll always say things like, I don't know about that. And it's like, that's it. Like, you're connecting with that. Let's just make it conscious.
Yeah.
It's like bringing it into their awareness. And when you're more aware of it, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right? There's just, our world is so loud, and we're trained to listen to other people.
That's definitely like a theme that seems to be coming out of having these podcasts. Is you'll find, like, you know, people gain attention by being like very like, this is the way to do it. I'm going to show you. I'm the expert. Like, you know, you're animal based, fix everything, or carnivore, fix everything, or just whole foods, or vegetarian. Or there's just, and I think that's such an important point to bring up, is like, well, yeah, it works for one person, then maybe it doesn't work for the other, or that can be dynamic within your own body, if I'm hearing you correctly. Like, and so the real learning is being able to like listen to your signals and being willing to like, okay, do I need to shift? You know, maybe this doesn't work for me all the time. Right.
And especially the diet, because they're meant, any kind of healing therapeutic diet is meant to be short term. It's not meant to be long term. And that's where people are getting in a lot of trouble, because like low FODMAP or carnivore or something, right? There's a reason that's making you feel better. But if you stay on that inevitably for just forever, it's going to damage the microbiome. You're not getting the same variety of nutrients. Like, it's not sustainable. Like, talk about like joy, like, like that's a vitamin too, you know? It just doesn't, even like the food sensitivities, you know, like a lot of people come and here they've done a food sensitivity test and they've taken out all of these foods, and that'll make you feel better because your immune system's reacting to those foods, but that's not the long-term solution. There's a reason you're reacting to those foods. The reason is in the gut. We've got to fix the gut, heal the gut, and then you should be able to eat those foods. To me, that's always the goal. The goal is always
more variety,
and getting your resilience and your tolerance back. The solution is not cut these 20 things out of your diet, of your life forever and go, oh, you'll feel great. Bye. No, oh my gosh. Like, and there's a lot of people, and I was one of them. Like, I thought that was what I had to do. And just take these out and you'll be okay. But like, no, that's so short-sighted. You're stopping short of the goal.
I had a similar, I can very much relate, because I was very sick. It was probably the same year, 24 is when I like made the switch. But I had gone back to an allergist to get a food sensitivity test because I was just tired of taking rounds and rounds of steroids and antibiotics and all this stuff. And I passed out during the test because I reacted to so many foods. And I mean, it was everything. It was like chicken, bananas, onions, garlic. I mean, the list was pretty much the entire list, you know? And so I took that, and that's what I did. I mean, I was eating I felt better because I was basically eating like spinach and, like fish, and like that's it, or
Yeah.
some version of that, right? For a little while. But yeah, but I was also training for a marathon, and it was like it wasn't sustainable, and also not really what I needed to do. But I wasn't given any other information other than like, oh, you must be allergic to all of these things, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was just so inflamed. So that also it really speaks to like how far we've come too. I feel like there's more answers, which is so good, and like different types of practitioners, which is really helpful. So yeah, that was a really the same thing, and I think it can be really defeating at any age, really. 20s, 30s. I mean, trying to do something when you have kids is really overwhelming,
Totally.
or if doing it for your kids is really overwhelming. So
Totally. Yeah, there's also the case to be made, like the older you are, the harder it is because you're only more set in your ways.
yeah.
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 Yeah, it's never easy.
Right. So I think this is a really interesting time because there is all of this focus on food right now, and like the news, and it's just all of a sudden everyone's very it's kind of funny, I think, for like you and I who've been in this space for a really long time, and all of a sudden everyone's like, what, there's chemicals in our food, and we're like, yes, that's what we've been talking about. But which is great. I think it's wonderful that it's a spotlight is being shown on it, but I think what it's also creating is a lot of fear for people with it's like like too much information coming in, and with most people don't have the tools to know what to do with that information. So how are you kind of navigating that, and like what's your perspective on all that going on right now?
Yes, I'm trying to. When was it? It was at some point when all of this was coming out, and I got this message on Instagram from a mom friend that just perfectly summed up what all the moms are feeling right now. And it's like, I feel like I cannot go to the store without feeling like I'm poisoning my child.
Yeah.
And my heart just broke for her. And like I just have so many friends right now, just like you say, like, yeah, we've known these things, and it's taken years of learning this stuff, and they feel like they need to learn it overnight.
Yeah.
And that's just impossible.
Right.
And I think people like us are going to be the ones that lead now in this, and just very compassionately. And I mean, because we were in their shoes at one point.
Absolutely.
Like, we've all been, and it's like you don't know what you don't know. And you can't beat yourself up for what you don't know. I have this conversation with my mom all the time. Like, what are the things going to be that we look back on? Like,
oh yeah,
I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I gave that to my kid, and it's probably, it's going to be the things that we think are healthy today, because it's always changing. Right. It's always, and you can only do the best that you can with what you have and what you know. So, I've been trying to think of and just share more, like small things and like little things. And I'm totally guilty of like almost forgetting, because I think now, being in the functional medicine space, I'm so like in the weeds of like hair testing and mineral balance and like this real like weird stuff. Yeah. And I have to catch myself like, back up. Like, yes, people just need to know how to cook a chicken.
Yeah, you get into the super advanced stuff. They're like deer in the headlights, or just glazed over look, like, oh, you've lost them before you even started.
Yeah. Like, perfect. Like, just before coming here, I'm on a practitioner call every week, and we're reviewing cases, and we're looking at genetics and a stool test, and talking about, genetic SNPs for glutathione and all this crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, but is he eating, what was the example? Like, yeah, but what's his diet? Like
Right.
just basically that. Like we forget these, just where our conversation started, the basics.
Yeah.
Are you doing the basics? And I tell my clients this all the time too, like that it's the stuff that looks and sounds really easy is the stuff that's really hard.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the stuff that you need your handheld for, because not that you need it, but like it's nice to have support, because I mean, habits are the hardest thing to change. Something that you do have done every day and you have told yourself that this is the thing you need to be doing, and your body feels it. I mean, that's the hardest thing to change, right? Like, so it's it is really hard, even if it is just like changing what you have for breakfast. That is hard, and also that is at the foundation of all of it, right? So like it is arguably one of the most important things you can do before you even get to all of the glutathione hair test, like whatever, like mineral testing, all that stuff, right? So
yeah, it's almost like save that for later, because everything's going to be totally fucked anyway at this stage. So like, let's not test you now. It's maybe going to like,
if you're eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast,
it's going to look real bad.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose hope like right away. So yeah, let's just do some foundational building before we start even testing. I don't know if that's like,
so what about,
or if you need to see like benchmark, you were here and now you're here, but like you kind of maybe know through the initial conversation that it's not going to look good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we always say like, there's no point in doing nutrient testing on someone who's eating donuts for breakfast and they're going to be low. Like, don't waste the money.
And even then, I think it's an interesting thing, having coached for a while now and been in this space. What people, whenever I have clients do a food diary, they're always surprised. It's their life, right? But I feel like almost every time they're like, oh, I didn't know I ate no vegetables, or I don't drink any water, or I'm not eating any food until 1 p.m., or and I don't know why I'm cranky or whatever. Like it's I think it goes back to bringing awareness to yourself, and slowing down. I think that's a big piece. So, okay, so let's talk about like, if someone is deep in the processed food life, and maybe they realize it and maybe they don't. Maybe they're just, just living their generally what they would call healthy life, but they want to make changes. Like, where would you start? What's like a simple change that can make you feel successful, that's not like too overwhelming, to kind of take a step in the right direction towards like cooking your food or something?
Yeah. I still think the first thing I have consistently every single client do at the beginning is starting their day with water. Again, it's like the simplest thing in the world and seems so obvious, but so many people go straight for coffee. Not even thinking about it. And that's just setting you up. I mean, like, we wake up dehydrated, and here you're having something that's dehydrating you more. That's sending you into your day. You're dehydrated, but you're also on the blood sugar roller coaster now. You're going to be ravenous because of the blood sugar crash. And if you're dehydrated, it feels like hunger, So just doing that, like having 20 ounces of water, and I usually tell people to do it as like a warm, in a mug, like a warm cup of water, add some lemon, add some salt for that like electrolyte balance, People like just that one thing. People are like, oh my God.
I really found I love the salt, a little salt and lemon. Like that's something I started doing. I was like, oh, this is like just this extra little like. It seems to really have helped.
It also, again, it's like it makes you mindful of what you're doing in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, so you're consciously starting your day with something that you know is good for you, which I think making those small choices makes it more likely that the next choice is going to be one that's better for you, at least, you know, maybe not all the way throughout the day, but it's just, it kind of sets you up in a better spot than just hitting the ground running on autopilot with like no thought about what you're putting into your body.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a good first foundational thing. Start the day with water. And then like you have like maybe a second step. Like, are you a proponent of exercise in the morning, or does that vary amongst people? And like, do you like breakfast, or it depends? Or
so in terms like the movement, I'd say it's like very much depends. Like, where is this person? You know, what kind of shape are their adrenals in? What's their energy like in the morning? And I think that's one of those first opportunities to really check in with yourself. Like, how do I really feel? You know, like, and helping them to build that. It's like a muscle, you know? So yeah, depending there, but I do really think, you know, just seeing in myself, you know, like I've never been a big breakfast person. Don't like breakfast food. Like anytime we're traveling, hotel, like I don't know what I'm going to eat, you know, like I always just bring stuff. But when I was using, have you heard of the Lumen? It's a breath device. So it tells you if you're burning carbs or fat based off of your breath.
Oh, interesting.
So you take a breath measurement throughout the day. It's telling you if you're, and the idea is obviously overnight, you want to be able to get into fat burning mode and wake up in fat burning mode. Right. And then if you're exercising, you're burning carbs. Anyway, I was consistently finding when I was increasing my protein at breakfast, it was easier for my body to get into fat burning mode, or like I'd get a lower score the next morning. It's like 1 to 5, and 1 and 2 being like you're in that fat burning mode. Yeah. And that was the variable that really changed it, was increasing the protein at breakfast. And everybody says that now, you know, it's like but seeing it in black and white for myself like that, I now always have like either a protein shake or chicken sausage or something. Like I'm starting to do like dinner at breakfast, which you know, I'm always like mindful of those kind of recommendations you give to clients. And like, you can't, like, same thing, like you can't go from having Pop-Tarts to having dinner for breakfast. But like so many people are like, oh, ew, what? Yeah. But you look at like what people do around the world, you know, we're the only culture that is eating like such a carb centric breakfast.
Yeah, it's insane to think about what I ate for breakfast growing up as a kid. I'm like, oh my God.
We were like huge cereal house.
I mean, I think everyone was.
Not me.
Not
me.
Yeah, well, me and you were.
No.
Yeah.
And I think many others also.
My dad made eggs literally every day, to the point that I was, for years, I was like, I cannot eat eggs anymore.
But he was right.
But he was right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we think right now he was right.
I know. He was right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's so interesting about the Lumen. I can totally, I've noticed the same thing for myself too, that I do better, and I'm not like on a hunger roller coaster.
Yes.
If I have some protein at breakfast, which same, like I mean, that was like, we used to drive when Whit and I first got married, before we started having kids, or when we first started dating, I guess, we're driving nuts because I would just wake up and like, I wouldn't need to eat for hours. Like, and he was like, after about an hour, he was like hangry. It was, you know,
I gotta
like,
eat.
he'd be like, can we please get food somewhere, you know, or like, and this is, you know,
we typically
all our meals.
have exercise too. So like, that's
we
what I like
out.
to like Yeah, like I love exercise in the morning. So then I'm like, after I've done that, I'm ready to like eat that meal I feel like I've earned, and like my body's telling me, sending me a signal that I want to eat.
Like, I need some fuel. You just like really pushed me.
Yes. Yeah. Which is change, which it also goes back to like, you know, you can't start, you know, if you're having donuts for breakfast to like, if you're not even cooking dinner, you're not going to eat dinner for breakfast, right? And all of this information, I feel like we've been in, it's taken over a decade for me to get to the point where I recognize that I feel different between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. if I have protein for breakfast. Like, I was not paying attention to that before. You know, I was at 24 when I changed my diet. I was just grabbing whatever food was around and like, you know, trying to go out with my friends at night and eating tacos on 6th Street or whatever, you know. So it doesn't, that kind of like awareness doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a little bit of time. And it's also individual. Like, I think everybody is different. You know, his morning routine is different from my morning routine. There might be similarities, but you really have to pay attention to how you feel best, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. On that lumen, I have like an interesting anecdotal story that you might find interesting. I can remember working with the dentist when I was fresh out of school. And after you like see patients for a long time, you'll see certain x-rays we take that are kind of a global x-ray. And you start to be like, oh, this person has, you know, diabetes. They're not aware of it, like because of the periodontal disease patterns. And I remember like my first boss one time, I was fresh out of school and he like saw the x-ray and he like did an exam and he was like, oh yeah, I can smell your breath and I see your x-ray. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a foul breath. It was like a fruity, aromatic like breath. Like it was like, he's like, you have diabetes for sure. You don't, and the patient's like, what? He's like, I'm positive. And sure enough, like guy was like, you know, uncontrolled diabetic, didn't realize it. But it was an interesting, I always remember that because it was like, now I've learned to pick it up on the x-ray all the time, but I always remember he was like, you know, smelled the patient and it was like, you think like almost like an ancestral way to do dentistry, but like, you know, like, it might sound gross to some people, but like, no, the body's like putting off these markers and that's one of them.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I think the connection with the mouth is so fascinating.
Yeah, that's me too. I mean, it's like such a changing
and view. So obvious, right? It's like, duh.
Yeah.
It's why have we not? Oh, hello. Yeah.
It's one of the easiest places to do like a exam on the inside. I mean, like it tells you so many things. I mean, it's incredible. And it's changed a lot in the last 30 years to being like more of like this like engineering, like how are people's bites and like the mechanical aspects of dentistry is now really shifted towards you know, whole body health and connection with the body. Yeah. So we diagnose and evaluate completely differently now than we used to.
Yeah.
I do at least.
Yeah.
And I think most of my colleagues do.
Well, and just the coming into the mainstream, the structure, the jaw, like the mewing.
Like airway health and jaw development.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, well, look at our diet. Everything processed, everything like that's pre-digested, like no one's chewing, no one's working those muscles. And kids are getting braces earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yeah, it is crazy. Okay, I want to switch topics because not switch topics, but dive a little bit deeper into kind of like a more holistic view on healing, which I know that you share. Aside from food, and this can be like either what you have seen work for yourself or things that you've seen work for your clients or that you suggest, like what are some of the like other alternative therapies? It can be like crazy woo-woo, that you feel like are also really helpful to support healing, like nervous system resetting or, you know, in whatever way, movement, it could be whatever you think. What are the things that you feel like are also really impactful?
Yeah, that's a good, like, I feel like it's started to become like, I don't know if it's just because it's what's all over my Instagram feed or algorithm, like whatever the algorithms are feeding me, but nervous system is everywhere now, right? Like everybody's talking about nervous system. But it's for a reason. I mean, really, everything is connected. Like that is what is setting that autonomic, like everything that's happening unconsciously in your body. And what I find so fascinating is constantly, the deeper we go into the weeds and like being on these practitioner calls or as I'm learning more, and the science is constantly just validating what we've known from the beginning of time, which is the sun is good for us.
Yeah.
Which is, we're like the same as plants.
Yeah.
You know, like we need like that power of like something so simple as letting the sun touch your eyeballs in the first 10 minutes of being awake, because that is setting your circadian rhythm, and that is helping to regulate your cortisol response. I was just giving this example yesterday to a client. I'm like, imagine two women. One, first thing in the morning, she's still in bed. She reaches for her phone, opens the news app, sees what's going on in Ukraine, sees what's going on in Washington. Another woman, she goes into the kitchen, pours herself a nice glass of hot lemon water, goes out onto her porch and watches the sunrise, goes for a walk. They're going to have very different, if you test their cortisol levels, very, very different profiles.
Also very different, just like realities, you know, like what you think of, like think about what you think about during the day, which has such like thoughts or things. I think it just really creates your perception.
And how you're going to react to the next thing.
Right.
Like then your kid comes down the stairs and they're not ready to go. How's this woman going to respond? And how's this woman going to respond?
Right.
I see it in myself. Like, you know, and that we're not just talking one day, because what we do all the time. So then this woman who is reaching for her phone in the morning, say she goes on vacation and she doesn't do that, her body's still going to be putting out the same amount of stress hormones because it's anticipating. It thinks it's primed. It thinks it needs that. And that's what we're seeing, you know, if you're testing hormones and you see that high cortisol awakening response. And then eventually that high cortisol awakening response is going to have her waking up earlier and earlier and earlier, right? Because her body thinks it needs all this cortisol. Her cortisol is going to be high. It thinks it needs it. It thinks it needs it. And it's not until we change what we're doing and send the signal. Our hormones, like, no one has a hormone problem. And there's like, that's another thing that's like so trendy. And like everyone's talking about wanting to fix their hormones. No one has a hormone problem. Your hormones are responding. They're helping you either survive or thrive in the environment that you're in. They're just responding, doing what they think they need to be doing. So you have what you need to either run for your life or have a baby, you know? We just need to figure it's what's the thing that is affecting the hormones, you know? Is it how we're living, or is it a physical stressor? I mean, there can be like things going on in the gut or food sensitivities, or those things can affect our cortisol levels just as much as that phone at 7 a.m.
That was like so well said. I love the way you said that. I mean, it's like you hear people like, I'm getting my like sex hormones optimized with my practitioner. And it's like, well, are they even having sex? Are they having like a healthy sex? Like just as an example, it's like,
like I've lost my libido or whatever. And it's like, well, it's kind of like you got to use that muscle.
And like
you know?
the way you said it, like, you know, it's not necessarily that you had the hormone problem, is that the hormone, you know, the activity you do that regulates the hormones, that's the problem. And your body could maybe self-regulate these things if you fix the habits.
And that's where the workouts come in. If you're training for a marathon and your body doesn't have the raw materials to quench the oxidative stress that I mean, just living, breathing creates oxidative stress, right? But our body also makes antioxidants. But everything is balanced. It's the Goldilocks effect, right? But if that's imbalanced, then you're going to have more inflammation, right? That's going to affect your hormone levels, your testosterone, right? And it's like, that's what is that individual piece, like, what do I need, and taking those things as a signal. Yeah, low libido. I mean, that's a vitality sign. Like, these hormones are sex hormones, like testosterone for men and for women, and progesterone is so sensitive to stress. Like, these are, like, I tell my, like, a luxury. They're luxury hormones. Your body's not going to make them in a state of like, like, if it thinks that we're not sure if we're going to survive, like, our testosterone is our motivation, our drive, and progesterone, you have to have progesterone to create life, and your body's not going to allow you to create a new life if it doesn't even think that we are going to survive. Like, it's really, like, commonsensical, but, like, we've just, like, way overcomplicated of, like, like, I gotta fix my hormones.
Yeah, which is really, like, you need to change your habits.
Yes,
it's ultimately what it is. I mean,
and it's so, like, look at our culture, look at the way, like, what's normal, like, how we're expected to live. Like, we have these devices in our pocket that, like, we're available 24/7.
I had one of the kids said something about, like, well, how would I get a hold of you if you didn't have your phone? And I was like, you wouldn't. And how nice does that sound? Like, I was like, do you know that, like, when I was younger, like, my parents would just leave the house and I couldn't get in touch with them. Like, how great does that sound? I was like, people have survived a long time. I was like, people used to have to send letters that wouldn't arrive for months, like, I mean,
I know our kids have, like, such a distorted,
right. But when you put it in that perspective, it's like, we are moving way too fast with zero awareness, and then being like, why is none of this working?
Right,
and it really is, it all comes back to habit changes. And food, I think, that is how I figured out how I needed to start taking the steps to heal, right? And it is a foundational piece, right? You have to have the raw materials, but that's not the only thing, like, it's, are you moving your body enough? Are your stress levels at, work and home, relationships, all of those things, how are those affecting you, right? Are you sleeping, right? Do you see the sun at all during the day, or do you show up? I mean, sometimes in the year, like, he goes into work when it's dark and comes out when it's dark, like, and he won't take a break for lunch. And I'm like,
no, that's something I've changed though.
Right,
now
right.
I get outside to see the sun, and I walk out and I, like, oh.
But there's a lot of doctors that do that every day in the hospital, and, like, and other professions too, I'm sure. So it's like,
it's so easy to do now. And
our previous guest, something you were just saying reminded me of our last guest, and something I heard yesterday at work. So you'll hear like, people will lose teeth when they're going through menopause, or when they, like, I hear this almost every day. A woman will come in like, I started losing teeth right after I had kids. Right. And then you were discussing, like, this dynamic equilibrium of, like, you might have more, like, nutrients going out, stress coming in, and, like, so are you managing that with your diet, exercise, stress levels, because it's like a time of, like, incredible taxation on the body, right? Like, it's really getting stressed. And so if you're not aware of that, you could get a couple of years later and you have all kinds of health challenges.
Totally.
Like, you call it, like, a luxury hormone, or, like, it's like, your body will just maybe start, the oral environment completely changes, and you start losing teeth.
Yes.
In these times of, like, higher stress.
Well, and I think you just look at, it's a basic supply and demand issue. The demand, like, everything in the body runs on nutrients, on minerals, on vitamins. We have to have those to make enzymes that are doing the things, right, that are producing the antioxidants, that are and then you look at our supply, even if you're eating a really healthy diet, it's hard to get, it's just not in the soil anymore because of how farming's changed. I don't know the exact numbers, but you look at a stalk of broccoli today versus in 1950, and it's like a fraction of the amount of magnesium and all the nutrients, all the minerals that are in there. And so it's simple math where if the supply is low and the demand is high, like all those functions aren't working as effectively.
Yeah. For people whose demand is like really high, and like, I mean, so like, let's say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and work out for an hour, then I'm going to work for 10 hours, and I'm going to come home and take my kids to sports. Like, are there like core diet like hacks you would say, like if I'm like, I need more vitality, I know I'm in this high stress, like maybe like certain supplements, you said magnesium, so like maybe specific foods and supplements for something like that scenario.
I think like all like your foundational minerals, magnesium, potassium, sodium, right? They're all working together, and this is why I'm nerding out so hard right now on hair testing and looking at mineral levels, because you can really, it's really a measure of the stress the body's under, because it's like a domino effect where without potassium, magnesium can't get into the cell, and so then you're losing that. Like they're all affecting one another, right? And responding to stress. So yeah, I think there, and then with working out like antioxidants, like a lot of berries, a lot of greens, like all of that's really going to provide that counterbalance, if you will, And then like, as we're talking about just that supply and demand, at the same, like our toxin exposure keeps increasing, right? And all of that, like detoxification is requiring all of this. So that's putting greater demand, you see? So I think that's where we're finding ourselves coming up short, in that deficit. And I think that's where a lot of people are. And whether you're, there's a lot of variety, like in terms of like, what's your diet like, and then there's that genetic component, some are going to like, why are there 80-year-olds who, have been eating Hostess donuts their entire life and they're doing great, it's a big puzzle.
Yeah. That's right. It's not a one size fits all.
And sometimes there is, I think that's a good point. Like your question, it's like, it's important to be mindful of all these things and do your best to support the body. And also like, there's going to be times of higher stress that are just going to happen, part of life. Like, it's like, certainly if you have a baby, you're going to be more tired, more nutrient, if you're breastfeeding, more nutrients going out. Like that doesn't mean you stop having babies, it's like, or it's like, it doesn't mean that you stop going to work or whatever. Like, I think, doing what you can to support yourself through those moments, and also just like tuning in to like know it. Sometimes it helps to just consciously know like this is a moment, and this is happening, and like it's not going to be forever.
No, it's temporary.
Right. And I think sometimes even that is like a little bit stress relieving. Are there any we focus a lot on movement, yoga, stuff like that. We also like sauna and stuff. Are there any other practices that you have clients do? I know, like, I used to do yoga nidra with you, and are there things like that, or I don't know, hypnosis or things like that that can be supportive, you think, during like really higher stress, other than food?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love yoga nidra too. Yeah, my kids asked for that last night.
Yeah.
They do that on the app.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I work with people coming to this from all different places, you know, and for a lot of them, it's a stretch to say, start meditating.
Yeah.
So instead, I'll recommend like what feels meditative to you. I mean, chopping can be meditative, coloring, drawing, walking, you know, like finding, I think what it comes down to is what's like hitting the pause button for you or the reset button and getting that in a few times throughout the day.
Yeah.
That really like feels like you hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Because that's giving like on that science level, that stress hormones, right? But then it's also just like helping your mood, you know, helping your how you can communicate and how productive you can be and you know, happy you are throughout your day.
Yeah. Okay, and then what about I feel like there's along the lines of like there's been such a focus on health and like food. I feel like there's also just, I think the awareness of functional medicine, which is wonderful, has also created this kind of not fear, but just kind of overwhelm about supplements and like which one should I be taking? Should I be taking all of them? Like, where do you stand? Are you like a multivitamin every day for sure, or kind of like as few as possible, or how do you feel about supplements?
I'm big on like, I want it primarily coming from the food. And then things like a multivitamin, I look at as like an insurance policy. Like, okay, this is like, here we're making sure that even on the bad days, the days where you don't like, your lunch is not ideal, right?
Yeah.
You're getting what, like a decent amount, right? So I feel like there's that category. And then there's the supplements that are filling a gap, a functional gap, and they're temporary. They're like, for example, a lot of things are cyclic in the body, right? Where if your minerals are out of balance, this is top of mind right now, you need sodium, potassium, zinc, and chloride to make stomach acid. If those are low because of stress, right, or poor absorption or whatever it is, your stomach acid is going to be low. Then with low stomach acid, you're not digesting your food as well, for one, so you're leaving more food fodder for microbes, setting you up for things not ideal in the gut, but also you're not as effectively drawing that good stuff out of the food. So you can be eating a really healthy diet, but you're not actually getting all the good stuff out of it, which is really frustrating. So supporting the minerals, but then also you can support with digestive support so that you're absorbing the food better, right? The stomach acid kicks off the enzymes, which are like the scissors that break up the amino acids. That's what we really want to be getting out of the protein we're eating. If your enzymes are low, that's going through, but that stuff isn't making it into the body. So you can actually supplement with those digestive enzymes, and then you're making your diet more effective, you know? But that's meant to be a short-term solution while you're resolving, okay, why is stomach acid low? Is it because the sodium and potassium is low, or is it because there's inflammation in the gut because there's dysbiosis and we need to fix that? And then it should resume, right? But with the supplement, you're breaking the cycle. So that's how I view most of the supplements that we use in, say, a protocol, right? And then there may be things that on the other side of that, I like to use supplements sort of like food. I'll have like a pantry of supplements, and it might include like a multivitamin, omega-3, some amino acids, some things. And it then kind of becomes like intuitive, you know, kind of going back to like how, like, and that's what I want my clients to have on the other side too. I don't want them to constantly need me. You know, like the goal is you know your body and you kind of know how you've been eating. Like, oh, I should probably take that omega-3 because I don't know the last time I ate fish. You know, like, like that's how I use those now. You know.
Yeah. Okay. And what about we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but I know your story, so maybe talk a little bit about your philosophy on medication for, like, as where I'm coming from is you were diagnosed with arthritis, and obviously we've been talking about using food as medicine to heal, right? And like, was it in conjunction with medication? Do you feel like medication has a place? Are you like, this can be like, is your philosophy like diet and lifestyle is superior to medication, you know, in terms of healing? What do you think?
So I think that medication is a godsend, like, especially in that situation. We just, because it's in the traditional model, that's the only tool. It's presented as the only tool, right? And as this, and I mean, that's what I was told, you know, like, you will take this medication for the rest of your life. But how I like to look at it is that's the bridge. Like, that is what's going to help you get your life back, help you feel better in the near term, and do the things that you need to do to get your health back. So it's helping you, you know, and the idea is that as the healing is happening, you don't need the medication anymore, and it kind of falls away. It starts, like, you work with your doctor to wean that medication. And sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't. But regardless, you know, I wish the conversation instead, like, for me, seeing the functional MDs, it was, this medication is going to kill you. Literally. I had a doctor tell me that at 24 years old. What if instead she had been like, let's talk about how we can support your body to really handle this medication, to heal what's going on below the surface, but also support, like, offset the damage that it like can do. There's good and bad, right? Like, how much more productive would that have been? You know? And instead I had this, like, fear around it. You know? And it was so unnecessary. Like, that like, I needed that at the time, you know? So yeah.
Your answer reminds me of, I had a great grandfather who was like a country doctor in, like, rural North Carolina, back probably practicing in the 40s. And I through our family have heard when, like, penicillin was introduced, he said, his phrase was, it's a miracle, like, but you only use it when you need a miracle. Right. So, like, there's this appreciation for what it can do to bridge maybe a time of when you really need it. But, like, and now, like, looking how we use medications now, it's like maybe we're just so quick to write them for everything.
Right. I really believe that the answer is going to be the two sides working together. I think that's how people are going to heal most effectively and sustainably, you know? And the challenge of that is, and I really felt it, and things were very different 20 years ago when I was going through this, but I remember feeling like I was cheating on my doctor, or like, I felt like I couldn't tell my rheumatologist I was seeing my functional medicine doctor. And I felt like the kid in, like, a divorced relationship or something, you know, which that is messed up. It should not be like that at all.
Well, I think that's like functional medicine is, like, trying to play this ideal role for so many people. And, like, I'm curious, like, I think this is an interesting topic, is, like, can you make, and you can answer it, like, is it hard to make money as a functional medicine provider? Like, because I think a lot of people go into traditional medicine because they want to help people, but also it's like, it's a good career. Like, you know, you're going to be able to work off this insurance-based, prescription-based model and make a good income. And, like, you in your mind, you're like, I'm helping all these people. But, like, have you found that, like, can you make money? Like, can you have a career as a functional medicine doctor? Is that changing? Like, what are the business dynamics of like being a functional medicine?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a completely different model, because you can't work with insurance for the most part, at least right now, but who knows what's going to change. I'm really hopeful that as awareness continues to grow about functional medicine, their accessibility, I think that's been a big hurdle in the past with functional medicine is, when I was first exposed to it, my parents were paying for everything at the time. There was no way I could have afforded it at all. You certainly, yes, you can make a very sustainable, very good living as a functional medicine provider. It's outside of that insurance model, cash-based, which is a very different clientele. It's a very different patient from your traditional doctor's office. It's someone who is willing to invest in their health, and that's also growing. People are becoming more aware. People are wanting to get to the bottom of their blood sugar issues, the prediabetes, their high cholesterol. They're asking these questions. They want to know. They want to understand it better. And so I only see potential and growth, and I'm really excited for the future of it. And I think more and more, like what I anticipate, I would imagine like how doctors have CMEs, or like anyone in the medical field has CMEs. What if that became a requirement? They have to start having X number of functional medicine CMEs. Like, I think that's how we're going to get there. It's just going to, it will, continuing medical education, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, because I think there's so many, I would bet, I don't know this, but I would bet there's a lot of people that are treating patients, and would want to start to, go. There's a huge demand from patients that want to be treated, maybe using like practices that you're using, and they're just wondering like, well, how do I do this from a professional level and career? What do those things look like?
Yeah. And I mean, I've met several doctors, nurses who that's exactly what they're doing.
This, but I don't know how to like.
And it's usually, and it's just like, I feel like all of us that are in this space, we got here because of our own health or someone in our family, someone close to us. And I mean, that's only going to continue to happen,
Yeah, that's happening more and more, which I think is pushing more people.
That's happening more and more. And I think the, it's not the doctors, it's not that they don't want to help in these areas. And a lot of their hands are tied.
Yeah.
They're stuck in a lot of ways.
I agree. And I think we've heard that from other conversations as well. And I think there is a general knowledge of that.
But it's possible. I mean, and Whit is an example, he was traditionally trained, in his specialty, board certified, all of that. Yeah. And generally, I think there's an advantage in dentistry because you do focus on prevention a little bit more. So there was more of a health focus for him. I feel like some people in the medical community, there's not really a focus on health, even in their own day to day. But yeah, and obviously we were married, so it was coming from me as well. But it took a full 1.5 to 2-year program, which he did fully working with a wife and kids, well into his career to kind of shift his perspective into the integrative and biological dentistry lens, and it's a huge commitment. And I think that's like you're saying, it's not and it's a huge commitment. And also it was a huge foundational change for how he looked at, I'm speaking for you, but you can.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and it can happen gradually within your practice. You don't have to on the next Monday, you come into your office and you're leading your team. You're like, guess what? We're a holistic practice now. We're everything we used to say, we never say anymore. No, it can be just like people make changes in their health. and it's like one small step at a time. I think from the provider's standpoint, that's like what I would imagine a lot of MDs and nurse practitioners that want to get into this space. I mean, that's like, hopefully, I think what you'll start seeing is like they start implementing one little thing at a time, and then their practices they may look very different after 10 years. I mean, that's what I envision my practice. It will look different 10 years from now, because we're always changing, and I think this is a new foundational piece that was kind of left out for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, to get off, okay, so maybe like off the business topic, and
Sure.
I have like some like kind of quick one-liners that maybe we can start to wrap things up. Yeah. So, okay. So, what would be like for you? What's your favorite like healthy meal? You're on the go. You got to make something quick. Like, what's your go-to healthy meal?
Oh, like a stir fry or a curry. Okay. Yeah, I made this green curry this week, and I was so surprised the kids loved it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was so good. Yeah.
How about like a current health trend that you think is like way overrated? Is there anything that comes to mind? Or
oh my gosh, all of the sudden, y'all, protein.
Yeah.
I know I said the protein at breakfast was huge for me, but I think soon we're going to start hearing we're overshooting it on the protein.
Yeah.
So we went too far.
Yeah.
Fiber matters.
Fiber. Yes. Yes. The unsung hero, right?
I heard somebody a few months ago be like, I think fiber is going to have a moment soon. And I was like, how weird that we can't just like talk about healthy eating. And but I think you're right. I think it's because it's confusing. I think if you're not deep down in this space, then you're just like, hammering like Chomps beef sticks all day. And like, that's not going to help anybody.
Who's that girl? Have you seen the girl on Instagram who's like, whatever amount of protein is going to kill you, subtract 10 grams. That's the amount.
No.
Right below.
Oh my gosh.
It's like just below that.
I do. It's it's come in conjunction with weightlifting, which I love. That has also been having such a moment. I think especially for women, and like being tied to longevity and all of that, which is great and also so true. And if you're doing one, you should be eating protein if you're weightlifting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But it's like these snippets where it's just like, load up on protein all by itself without like, okay, but also like you should be cooking at home. You should be eating vegetables and fruits. And, it's taken out of context, like all of these things.
I was somewhere and someone had made like a carnivore bar, and it was like, I turned around and I was like, sounds like that episode of Friends where Joey's like, it's the shepherd's pie. You got the mashed potatoes, the beef, the peas, and jam. It was literally like ground beef, beef tallow, and strawberries. I was like, beef tallow, it's healthy for you. Like, okay, it's better than the alternative, but like, we're not supposed to be like eating spoonfuls of beef tallow.
Yeah. Like literally.
Very high fat.
Putting it all over your body, eating it just like nonstop. It's like there's a limit to everything.
Sorry, I slowed down
your
rapid
that's
fire.
Fine.
That was
I'm gonna add one. 10 years from now, do you think we'll look back fondly at drugs like Ozempic or negatively? What's your prediction?
Good question. I've got some nuance to it. I think Ozempic is going to lead into this. I'm real curious about the microdosing of Ozempic and these kind of GLP-1s for inflammation and chronic pain. I'd like to see it take that turn, but I don't think it's going away in the weight loss space. What I think we're going to see is a surge, and not that we're not already seeing a surge in SIBO, in gallbladder removal, in all sorts of gut issues, because you're slowing down that motility. It's bound to have, it's going to be too far to connect it. It's going to be years and years down the road. So like so many things in that area, you can't draw a direct line. But
cool. Good answer. I think, neat. Do you have a snack that you think of that's like super indulgent, but it's actually good for you, or like nutrient rich?
Oh, dark chocolate.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Yeah, like 70-80% dark chocolate with sea salt. Yeah.
Yes. This question made me think of the avocado mousse chocolate with salt.
Oh, that's so good.
Yes, that has been such a good addition.
Mhm.
Or like a handful of nuts with chocolate chips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, simple.
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong. Yeah.
All right. Well, was that your last rapid fire
Mhm.
question?
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. This has been so fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here today. Where can everybody find you? Do you have anything you have coming up you want to plug or?
Yeah, so my practice, you can find me online, norulesnourishment.com. And I'm on Instagram just as my name, Meagan Adams Brown. Yeah, I mean, right now I'm working with people one-on-one. I've got space for new clients. I'm playing around with the idea of a group program that is more just like changing your lifestyle, like done with like the crazes and the diets and all the things, right? You just want like that freedom from the chatter of all of that, you know? And it's really the foundation. It's really like the basics. It would be like the first step before we then go into, you know, but then also having the option to personalize it, like where we could also do like looking at labs and doing like a unique approach. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, awesome. I can vouch. Meagan and I have worked together, so she's an amazing coach. So definitely look her up. And
likewise.
Oh, thanks.
To you.
Yeah. So this is super fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And
thanks, guys.
Yeah,
this is great.
All right.
Always love chatting with you.